Here we have a 1988 movie that features this large, massive, viscous creature that eats everything it comes across, and it doesn't star Roseanne.
It's the Blob on Scarifyer.
To a new world of gods and monsters.
If it had a mind, you could reason with it. If it had a body, you could shoot it. If it had a heart, you could kill it. Now, man is no longer the supreme being on this planet.
The organism is growing at a geometric rate. By all accounts, it's at least 1,000 times its original mass.
Nobody believes me about what happened tonight.
What did happen?
You were there, you saw.
Plasmic life form that hunts its prey. Predator.
I want that organism alive.
I think you ticked it off.
The Blob. Terror has no shape.
Hello, everyone out there. It's Friday. That means it's Scarifyer. I am your host, the Gov.
And I'm Quinn.
And it is remake month here on Scarifyer.
Yay.
We went on to our social media and we asked you guys what kind of horror remakes you guys would like us to talk about on Scarifyer, and we got quite a list.
We got so many, and we really appreciate you guys reaching out to us. It was awesome, and a lot of people had some great suggestions.
And please keep them coming. We
Yes.
love seeing them, and it changes our minds every day.
Yeah, some things that we didn't even know were out there. We want to hear from you.
So just as a, kind of not a rule, but something to establish, we're talking about these remakes. We're going to try our best not to compare too much to the originals.
It's going to be a challenge, but
We're not going to be perfect at it. You're probably going to hear it, but we really want these movies to stand on their own.
yeah, just to kind of analyze the film as itself, not trying to see a compare and contrast, just something that we can look at the film as a singular entity.
And today, that film being 1988's remake of The Blob. It was requested by a lot of you out there, and it's something that we wanted to look at for a while, so we're taking a look at it. And it's actually one of the earliest horror remakes that's out there, so what better way to start?
It's also one of the best, in my opinion, the most respectful.
It's true. It was very well done.
All right, Gov, do you want to give us some back history before we dive into this?
Well, I probably should. Before working together on The Blob, director Chuck Russell and co-writer Frank Darabont also collaborated on the script for A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Production for The Blob began on January 11th with a cast and crew of approximately 150 staying in Abbeville, Louisiana. In creating the titular blob creature, the special effects team used silk bags filled with a thickening food agent, creating what the team described as a blob quilt. The Blob was released August 5th, 1988, grossing only $8.2 million on its $10 million budget, making it a box office bomb. Though, like most films of this era, it has become, you guessed it, a cult classic.
For good reason. I'll give it that for very good reason.
Yeah. So, I've seen this movie. It's nothing that I've seen a lot.
Right.
I've seen it in passing.
Not something that you would like flock to automatically.
It's not a movie that's often, you don't really find it on movie shelves and stuff like that. I know it's gotten its Blu-ray release and stuff like that. I think Shout Factory had something to do with it.
But again, it's that cult status that got it there. I think otherwise it would be buried.
But you don't see like TV screenings.
No.
I think it was on streaming at once upon a time, maybe Netflix back in the heyday. So I've seen it around, but it's nothing that I've really kept returning to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How many times have you seen this?
I've only seen it twice.
Really?
That's it. I saw it once just because I was a fan of the original and I just wanted to see what they did. And then the second time just to refresh my memory for this episode.
Well, obviously, yeah. I would say for this episode is probably maybe my fourth or fifth time watching this movie.
I mean, it's very respectable to its source material, and that's one of the things that I do like it, because I feel like so many times in modern age when they remake a film, they kind of like promise you that it's going to keep that nostalgia of the original, and then they give you something totally and completely different, which, don't get me wrong, I can appreciate like updating films, but when they completely and totally destroy it, that to me is awful. This one stuck pretty true. Obviously they had to update it because it was the 80s, not 30 years earlier or whatever. But it's not bad. It's definitely something to see, But
it definitely has that 50s mentality to it.
Yeah,
you still
that's what
got
I'm saying.
your small town, you got your cheerleader archetypes, you have your
rebel bad boys,
rebel without a clue archetypes, you have your football players, and you have the small town, the dad works for the pharmacy. You can't get more wholesome than that.
Small town America, USA.
Exactly. So this movie, I felt like handled its source material well, but they just really upped the ante in terms of gore. I mean,
But it was the 80s. It was the late 80s.
Sure, it has elements of kind of like your slash and gashers of the time. I mean, look at your director and co-writers. They're fresh off of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 Dream Warriors. Clearly the reason why they got this film.
Yeah, well, that was also really popular at the time.
Exactly.
Was that body horror type gore thing. That was the theme.
And this is one of the few movies that are lumped into that, like, we're going to take horror movies or science fiction horror movies from the 50s and we're going to update them for the 80s. The other one that comes directly to mind being The Thing.
Yeah.
And I would classify this movie with that one. I mean, which one did it better? That's that's perspective of taste.
That's a totally different debate.
But I would love to go to the drive-in and see a double bill of The Thing by John Carpenter and this.
No, that would be really cool because I can definitely see some similar elements in it. The thing that I also like that they added to this film was, again, they didn't stray too far away, but the thing that I like about the Blob itself, in the 88 version, it's very animalistic.
It is.
It genuinely like attacks, and that's where it kind of has parallel elements with The Thing, as opposed to the 50s version, where it just kind of like rolled down the street, and if you just so happen to be upon it, you're shit out of luck because it just kept spreading. This actually attacked people. I also thought the makeup effects in it were actually pretty good.
I agree. Some effects looked like a rubber mask.
Well, it was 88. Come on.
No, I get. But also look at it this perspective. This is 1 year after Hellraiser.
Okay, but you can't really compare the two.
In terms of makeup effects, sure you can.
Well, what was Hellraiser's budget too?
Well, I mean, that I don't know. I don't have that information in front of me, but standards being standards. And also you got to remember this is a major studio behind the Blob. This is TriStar. Had a $10 million budget. I don't think Hellraiser did. But, I'm sure that went to other things like, blowing up a town, which is always great.
It's the little things in life.
As far as the plot of this movie goes, there's really no point in kind of going step by step through the plot because we all know the plot. It's the same as the 1950s version.
Yes.
It's this meteorite strikes down on this small town, and what comes from the meteorite is this viscous blob. There's no other way to describe it. And it starts...
The mysterious pink dressing from the salad bar.
You know...
That's what it looks like.
So many times, especially when the blob in this film grows so big that it's starting to like take over a building. I'm just waiting for the Ghostbusters to come in on the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Because it looks...
Whoops, wrong set. Sorry.
And this is a year prior to Ghostbusters 2, so, but the similarities are staggering.
Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Wonder what? Whether she's naked under that toga. She's French. You know that.
But that's where we get introduced to our characters, and like I said, they're the archetypes. We got the wholesome cheerleader played by a very young Shawnee Smith,
yes,
who you horror fans will get greeted to in the Saw franchise, playing Amanda. We have one of my favorite character actors, Art LaFleur. You've seen him in so many things, playing
amazing.
Her dad, the pharmacist, and he just oozes with that 1950s small town wholesomeness. And then you got brother of Matt, Kevin Dillon, playing Joey Ramone, playing this character, Brian Flagg, who is our rebel without a clue.
And his hair.
That's the reference I made to Joey Ramone.
And his hair.
Okay, you know what? Since we're talking about it, the single biggest thing that bothered me about this movie was that the hair.
What bothered you about it? Let's get into
all of
it. Well, I know there was a lot of it, but
existed.
no, the thing that like drove me nuts is like he couldn't even like pull it back or anything like that.
No.
Like,
and
it looks like a beaver tail.
You know.
I'm thinking of like it part 2. Shave that mullet, man. It's been like 30 years.
Shawnee Smith had crazy hair too. She had super 80s. She looked like Kelly
80s.
Kapowski.
Yeah,
like,
it was 80s, but at least hers was manageable.
Yeah.
Jerry curls for days.
No, Joey Ramone, his hair in this.
Have like his mullet like break down the door or something like that with like a shotgun or something.
Oh man,
That'd be great.
And then
his hair be the hero.
And then the acid wash jeans and the leather jacket and the motorcycle just adds to my frustration.
It is really confusing to look at. I'm not gonna lie.
And another thing that suffers from this is because these are such archetypes, these characters really don't have any character.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, her character, I think, was a really good development. She was that wholesome small town girl, and she becomes a heroine.
She becomes a badass, as these movies of this time would make. This is hot off of Aliens.
No, exactly.
You know what I mean? So you do have
those are the kind of strong female characters that we need. No, because she does start out kind of as a damsel in distress and then quickly realizes, well, you know what? If no one else is going to do it, then I'm going to step in. And she does, and she kicks so much ass, it's not even funny.
It does. It does come from, like, she has a, well, I'm the cheerleader, I need to be with the football star, and she is, and stuff like that, and we can't hang out with this bad boy, Joey Ramone, and I might be overthinking this, but she, of course, is kind of the girl next door. She does what her parents say, and after the blob starts attacking, and she's obviously upset by, I think the first person to die would be this homeless man who finds the meteorite, and she cross paths with him. So does the football player. So does Joey Ramone, and they all get kind of tied up in this web that starts. So you get a scene where she goes home and she's trying to calm down and her parents send her to bed, and I could be overlooking this, but this is Chuck Russell. There is a very specific scene where her mother gives her sleeping pills and she refuses to take it. To me, is straight out of Nightmare on Elm Street.
No, that totally was. You
know, and you could also make the argument that it is a commentary on, you know, parents saying, just go to bed, everything will be better in the morning, when really it's not.
No, yeah. No, I can see that. But I know that a lot of people also say that this movie is a government and social commentary.
Yes, can we talk about that for a second?
I can totally see the levels in that. That was the difference, I think, between...
The biggest difference, I would say.
The first film was talking about, like, consumerism a little bit.
Well, you got the social satires of the 50s. Like, like everything, if it's an alien from outer space or an underdweller or a monster from the sea. It was always the Red Menace, right?
Yes.
That's what the original was.
No, exactly. This one, because, spoiler in case anyone hasn't seen this, it's
over 30 years old. I think we're safe.
I think we're okay. It ends up being a part of a government experiment for chemical warfare.
It's a biological weapon.
Exactly. And they're willing to wipe out the town. That way there's no witnesses and, it'll be fine, a few casualties, whatever. We have to make advancements. And I very much can see that as government trying to control and overpower, and the small town representing regular U.S. saying, no, you can't do that, and us standing up against them.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's all over the film. Even how these, E.T. looking motherfuckers with their hazard suits are opposing Brian Flagg, Joey Ramone, as I've been calling him this whole episode. Because look at him. He's the rebellious teenager.
Yeah.
He's got the long hair, the leather jacket, the ripped jeans and stuff like that. He's opposing the established order. So what? Kill him. You know what
exactly.
I mean? And no, absolutely. It is all over this film. And I think that's, for a movie that does stay close to its source material, them trying to update it was well done.
No, I think
that respect.
I think they pulled that off very, very well. It's that, government knows best. Just be quiet, do as you're told, stay put. And even if it's something dangerous, just do as we say. And
it reflects the more cynical era of the 80s.
Yeah.
Where people were saying, don't trust the government blindly.
Yeah, exactly.
And they
stand up, fight back.
I mean, I don't know if you have to depict them as so sinister and stuff like that.
No, but it's also Hollywood.
No, it's true. Especially when you got the scene toward the end, or nearing our climax, where you have our lead characters, Shawnee Smith is trying to save her brother and her brother's friend. Again, that's very out of the original. They end up down in the sewer, and the government agent guys get wind of this and straight out of Chud park the car on top of the manhole so they can't get out because they want to contain the issue. And now that these teenagers are part of the issue, they can't talk.
Yeah.
They can't speak.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I mean, and again, spoiler alerts, they'll get their comeuppance.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, as these films usually do, which to me is the right direction, because I hate frustrating endings. Really do.
And it's also an 80s teen movie because we have your typical date rapist.
Oh
the
my
guy.
God.
Talk about the guy's trunk real quick. Because if he wasn't trying to date rape this person, he would be my hero.
You mean the girl that was like completely and totally passed out?
Yeah. Yeah. His special was cherry sodas.
Yeah.
He called it and stuff like that. Roofie.
It's roofies.
Roofie coladas, he means.
You know that's what it is.
Yeah.
He drugged her.
But that's what also makes this 80s.
Well, the thing that I love the most is literally when he goes to reach in and grab her boob, is this tentacle thing comes out and wraps around his arm, and her head rolls over and it starts deflating, and he starts screaming, "Vicky!"
I know, as if
obviously it's not Vicky, since Vicky's now dead. Why are you yelling at her?
and her head kind of deflates, almost like the guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark, just kind of melts and deflates.
Yeah. It's rapey.
It's so rapey.
It is so rapey.
It's so rapey, and only the 80s could pull it off like that.
God.
But before we dive into that, we feel now is the best time to tell you that Scarifyer are proud supporters of Rue Morgue. Rue Morgue is the world's leading horror and culture and entertainment brand, spearheaded by its multiple award-winning magazine, Rue Morgue and Rue Morgue Digital. But if reading's not your thing, that's okay, because there's Rue Morgue TV, the official YouTube channel, as well as Rue Morgue Cinema, which produced the acclaimed original film, The Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Lee. So head over to RueMorgue.com and subscribe to Rue Morgue magazine for your bi-monthly slice of horror culture and entertainment today. So why don't you think this film caught on or did well?
Well, I don't know much about marketing. I don't know how much it was marketed. I'm wondering if maybe that hurt it a little bit. I also think that it wasn't, because if you think about it, the 80s was very much a monster era. that's what people
It was
wanted.
slashers.
Yeah, exactly. And this was very much
at the zenith of slashers.
And obviously, people of the 80s are going to know about, the Blob from the 50s. I mean, their parents or whatever. And that's like a sci-fi movie. And that wasn't really the popular thing at the time. We had Freddy Krueger that we're going up against. We have Jason that we're going up against,
Mm-hmm. And being 88, guess who just returned to the cinemas? Michael Myers.
No, exactly.
So
that's the thing. I think that they were kind of competing against a losing battle. Do you know what I mean?
I think one of the things that also hurt it was not only that, but it's hard to replicate that B-movie charm. And I think some of the critics called it out for this.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to replicate this B-movie charm, but you can't do it because you got a major studio behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and this has already been done before. So you try to compensate it with gore effects and try to bring other people into it.
So were you saying it was overdone and maybe people were too desensitized?
I think I'm more or less saying that this is a time when remakes were frowned upon.
Which is kind of a bummer because
I mean, they're kind of frowned upon now because people kind of.
Well, maybe people did them right.
I mean, the remakes lost the allure of them. But let's take us back to like early 2000s, where that's all we got. Well, I'm happy to report, Quinn, that you're actually spot on about the misadvertisement because.
Do tell.
Yes, because director Chuck Russell did an interview in Starlog where he talked about this film, and he was quoted to say, "Maybe it was a mistake to do a remake of The Blob with a sense of humor. I thought it would be an entertaining interpretation. Unfortunately, it was released late in a very hectic summer filled with very big films, and it didn't have a particularly good ad campaign."
Mm-hmm.
So there it is.
It's a film that got buried, basically.
So there it is. I mean, he's right. It was stiff competition. This is summer of '88.
Like I even said, you had so many things that you were competing against. They kind of had a losing battle.
Yeah, I mean, and then correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't watched the original in a long time. I thought the original was really funny.
I thought the original was hilarious.
I thought that had a sense of humor.
I guess it's all about interpretation.
Yeah.
I guess.
Mm-hmm. Despite the Blob's shortcomings, everyone came out of this fine because Chuck Russell would go on to make big films like The Mask with Jim Carrey and The Scorpion King. Kevin Dillon has a long and really good career that's still going strong today, and Shawnee Smith is beloved more than ever in the horror community. Mm-hmm. So, and not to mention her music career and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about anyone from The Blob.
Yeah, they're all okay. Nobody was harmed in the making of this film.
I will say this. So this film has its fair share of Easter eggs. There's one in particular that I want to talk about real quick because I just thought it was so cool. You get the ending where Shawnee Smith and Joey Ramone destroy the Blob by pulling a Smile You Son of a Bitch and blowing it up with a CO2 truck. And it jumps forward, I guess, to the future where you see this crazy reverend creature. You see this crazy reverend character who is your typical, the end is here, this is the
end
of times and stuff like that. It's this blob that's going to be Armageddon. Jump forward a little bit. He's still preaching, and he has his followers, and he is disheveled because of the damage he took during this movie because of the blob, and he has this eye patch. And then you have your typical, as kids would say today, clickbait ending, where they kind of set up a sequel, but it obviously didn't happen due to the performance of this film. But I just want to focus really quick on the way he looks in the scene with the eye patch, because Reverend Meeker is played by Del Close, who is in the sequel to the original Blob, Beware of the Blob, where he plays the hobo character with an eye patch.
That's hilarious.
That was cool.
That was perfect.
That was really cool. And what a great way to end the film.
Right?
I was not aware of that.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into rating it. Gov, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go first this time. I will say this. It's a solid film, and we were trying so hard not to compare it to the original one. I feel like we did a lot of that this episode.
Yeah.
To err is human, but we do want to rate it standing on its own. So standing on its own, I'm going to give it a solid 3. I'll give it a 3, an average review. I will admit, I didn't enjoy it this time. It's been a few years since I've seen it. I used to love it. Like I said, I've only seen it maybe 3 or 4 times, but when I did see it prior, I loved it. This time, for some reason, it didn't rub me the exact same way, and I think the reason is lack of character.
I can see that.
Like I said earlier in this episode, these characters are archetypes. Yes, they turn Shawnee Smith into the heroine, and Kevin Dillon is super cool. But there's really not much for them to do except be these archetypes. I can't tell you one line of dialogue that stuck with me with them. And that's not a good sign.
No.
Also, some of the effects are on the questionable side. Sometimes, again, it looks like you're deflating a sex doll when the characters are getting eaten. Other times, the green screen is obviously green screen, especially toward the end.
Yeah.
The blob itself, I question its size. Sometimes in the movie, it's one size, and then it's bigger, and then it shrinks down again. So I don't know if that was an editing problem or...
I thought that was intentional.
Or maybe it was intentional, but...
Like it's adapting to where it's trying to be.
Maybe. I don't know if that was the government's plan. I don't know. But it's a solid movie. It does stand on its own. I never feel the need to go to the original for reference when I'm watching this. I can let this one stand on its own. So it has its faults. I think it deserved a better day in court when it was released, but thankfully it has its cult following. I'll give it an average of a 3 out of 5.
Respectable. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it a 3 as well. Not only just because of like the points that you put out. The other thing that I have an issue with is the noise that it makes. This thing growls.
It does.
It literally growls, and all I can think about is Jaws.
Because sharks have vocal cords.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
Jaws the Revenge she's referring to.
Yes, that is the only issue that I have with the creature itself, the blob itself. Otherwise, I think it looks just fine. Sometimes some of the special effects can look kind of messy, almost like they were in a rush and they didn't take the time for those fine details. But it's a lot of fun. It does hold its own, and I do respect that. And it is fun to see. It's something that you want to experience at least once.
Solid. I mean, again, it's not a critically favorited movie. It didn't have a good life when it was first released on August 5th, 1988. But we love our cult movies. We love our cult followings. And because of it, like the Blob, this thing just keeps growing. The Gov is going to tell you real quick how to bring the horror into your own home with a handmade soy wax candle from American Nightmare Candle Company. The scents are inspired by locations iconic to the horror genre, places like the Overlook Hotel, Sleepy Hollow, and Elm Street. Each fragrance combination is carefully curated to transport you into the story, and the catalog is ever evolving. So head over to Etsy or to AmericanNightmareCandles.com and get 10% off when you use the code Scarifyer at checkout. This deal only makes sense, so get your American Nightmare candle today.
Hey there, it's Quinn from Scarifyer. You ever have one of those days where you're out on the lake and the sun's going down, gazing into the eyes of that special someone, and then you realize, I brought my machete, but no hockey mask? Well, if you're in a rush to make a killing, head over to 13X Studios and get your very own custom hockey mask. Mask creator Rick Stasinski takes a hands-on approach to every order to create the perfect mask to to your specialized needs. Why would you settle for red triangles when you can shop an assortment of original styles and colors? Rick's clientele includes Nightmare Toys, Kevin Smith, and Kane Hodder. Head online to follow 13X Studio on all social media platforms. Then go over to 13X Studios on Etsy to put in your custom order today. Don't get caught with your mask off while devising your next decapitation. Go to 13xstudios.com.
Scarifyer.